So we're over halfway through our current road trip, and we're going to talk about some lessons that I've learned so far. Let's check it out. What's going on, YouTube? FXDLS Brooklyn is back in the building. And yeah, you know, when you do enough of these bike trips, they're very transformative. You are coming out the other end of these bike trips a different person. Growth, harder, and lessons learned, right? So, as always, I like to stop and reflect on these lessons, especially right now as we are about halfway through our trip. We just cruised in and around Montana, out here in Big Sky country, and now we are cruising through Yellowstone. Today is a pretty heavy mileage day. We're going to be on the road all day today, and I think the end location is going to be Hewlett, Wyoming. But yeah, what are the lessons I've learned so far on this trip? Well, lesson number one is go with your gut before you leave in terms of preparing. If you have a gut feeling about doing something to your bike, whether it's brake pads or tires or whatever, just do it. Because as you've seen with this trip, I've had to spend some time doing some maintenance on the road for my chain, which was, you know, not a major holdup or anything, but would have liked to have the peace of mind knowing that I could just, you know, be good with this chain for the entirety of the trip. And I even ordered a new chain and sprockets before I left, but then, you know, everyone I talked to was like, yeah, you know, you can probably finish out that entire trip with that chain you got on there and then change it when you get home. So I knew I was kind of pushing it. And yeah, I regret not just changing it when I was at home and could have done it, so I would just have the peace of mind now. I mean, luckily, if you saw a previous video, the good folks over at that Polaris dealership out in Idaho were nice enough to take me in and adjust it for me, torque it down, do everything that needed to be done just so that it wasn't slapping around. But, you know, I would have liked to not have to deal with that on the road. And even now, you know, when the opportunity presents itself, most likely in Sturgis, I'm probably going to be looking to throw a new chain on there for the ride home, just to not chance it any further than I already have. Lesson number two, and this is kind of why you see me running rain gear right now, but it's take advantage of all your layers, because right now it is cold, man. It is cold. I think we're riding in the 50s, which is surprising because temperatures out here were abnormally hot last week. I think they had like days in the hundreds or whatever. But now it's cold, which is how I remember it being out here, especially on the earlier side of the day. So that's why I'm wearing my rain gear over the hoodie and the jacket and the jacket liner and my heated gloves, obviously not plugged in, but I'm taking advantage of every layer I have, including my rain gear, just to keep my core warm so that I don't have to plug in the rain gear, because I don't really feel like being plugged in right now in July if I don't have to be. So take advantage of all your layers. You know, that's definitely a good lesson of this particular trip. Lesson number three is to bring your heated gear. I haven't had to use it, but I do enjoy having the peace of mind right now that if it does approach freezing temperatures like it did back in 2017, we're riding through 30-degree temperatures at like 4 in the morning, that I am prepared. You know, I do have it if I need to resort to it. So if you're cruising in around this way, you want to be prepared for all weather that you potentially might meet. Lesson number 4, and you can see I'm riding in 6th gear right now. I'm riding at a pretty low RPM. But I feel like at this particular trip, you know, with doing the heavy miles that we've been doing, I've been trying to go much easier on my bike than I have in trips in the past. So not sitting at like 40k RPMs like I'd usually be doing at home, running the bike in a more realistic way for longevity, this being the marathon, not the sprint. And again, in years past, you know, I've ran this bike really hard even throughout the long miles, and you know, being a little bit more realistic, and again, trying to go for that longevity, trying not to have a potential breakdown if I don't need to. You know, I'm trying to, on the long mile days like we're doing right now, be a little bit easier on the bike, you know? Not, you know, just be more realistic and not riding hard at all times, because when I have done that in the past, you're putting more of a strain on the bike, which is fine, you know, that's not a big deal if you're riding in the tri-state area. But we're far from home, man. We're very far from home, so that's a lesson I learned, is ride realistically and go for the marathon, not the sprint, when you're doing these trips. Lesson number 5 is take advantage of all surface area of your pack, right? So you've seen a lot of times in this trip, I'll be using my bungee cords to bungee things on to my Biltwell Xfil 80, just to free up a little bit more room in my Leather Pros, just because I don't like to ride with those Leather Pros completely packed out. Only if it's a day like today where I did put the rain cover over the Biltwell Xfil 80, so I'm not bungee cording anything, so the Leather Pros are pretty packed up. But on normal days where I know we're not going to be hitting gnarly weather, I am definitely using bungee cords to bungee things onto the Xfil 80 and taking advantage of every surface area that I have, you know, just so I don't have to be packing down the Leather Pro bags, you know, which is nice, because, you know, now, you know, the next time we do a road trip, maybe I'll throw a can of gas on there, you know, maybe I'll throw some things on there, just because, you know, I'm really optimizing the storage on this trip, and I feel really good about that. Lesson number 6. Yeah, they go on and on. Is take time to be physically active. I gotta say, like, today's definitely not a day where we're gonna be able to do that. But when we've had low mileage days where we're, you know, taking in the scenery, or not, like, you know, getting up and immediately hopping and loading the bikes and crushing miles, it's been really nice. You know, my dad and the Scorpion, they've kind of been pretty fitness conscious this last month to, you know, be prepared to do this type of trip. So when we've had opportunities, we'll just go out and we'll walk 5 miles. And yeah, I run usually. That's what I've been doing lately as a form of exercise. But even walking 5 miles, especially on a trip like this, really makes a huge difference, just in regards to how your body feels as you do these heavy mileage days. So this has been the first one we've really taken advantage of, just getting out there and moving, and I'll tell you what, man, it makes a huge difference. Lesson number 7 about this trip is taking time to do nothing, and what I mean by that is taking time to practice mindfulness. For me, that's 20-minute meditations at a time, right, where I'm just focusing on my breathing. And even if I have to get up a little bit earlier and just have that be the first thing I do, where I just set a timer and meditate for 20 minutes, it makes a really big difference on how my day goes. And, you know, you've been with us on these trips. We're experiencing all sorts of things not going as planned, all sorts of challenges. And when you come into the day in a mindful way, you're able to stay low and handle whatever the situation might be in an efficient and in a calm way, which makes a very big difference. And lesson number 8 is make sure that you're bringing something to the table and putting others' needs who are riding with you before your own. In order for the pack to run efficiently, you have to have that hive mindset. So, you know, for example, the Scorpion broke down 100 miles into the trip. That became the priority. The priority wasn't me thinking about all the miles lost in those 6 hours or all the riding I was missing out. The priority was getting him back up on the road, getting him safe, right? And I like to think that these 3 guys had the same intentions for me when I was dealing with that chain situation, which, you know, resolved itself pretty quickly. You know, we're only at that dealership for about a half hour before we got back on the road. And even little things, you know, like going out of my way and taking the time in the morning to use the coffee setup that I brought to make everyone coffee. You know, there's like little things you want to do and you want to bring to the table just to keep the energy of the pack and keep the morale of the pack up, because it makes a really big difference. If morale sinks and you're not having a good day or you're blaming each other for what have you, that makes for a day that is not fun. So pack morale is really important. You got to make sure that you're doing things to make your road dog's life easier, and, you know, just look out for each other. It's important. And that's a big lesson, because, you know, in years past, I feel like, obviously, you know, I'd be looking out for those who I'm traveling with, but, you know, I wouldn't go too far out of my way. I definitely wasn't playing Starbucks barista and making everyone coffee, but the lesson learned here is it makes a really big difference to, you know, even though you have a million things to do, you got to pack up your bike, you know, you're dealing with your own gnarly situation, it makes a really big difference to, you know, just go the extra mile for those that you're traveling with in terms of morale. Lesson number 9, and this one is probably pretty obvious, but, and I know some of you might argue with me about this, and again, this is coming from someone who excessively plans things. I am very routine oriented, very plan oriented, right? But a lot of things happened in this trip that either didn't whatever small plans we did have, a lot of things did not go to that plan. Like, we were going to take 70 into Utah. We never even hit Utah because 70 was shut down due to mudslides, right? So things didn't go to plan. So whatever we did have planned didn't go to plan, right? And because we'd had a very loose plan, it didn't really derail anything. It was like, all right, we didn't really know exactly what we wanted to do anyway, so it didn't like ruin the trip. It was like, all right, cool, you know, why don't we just shoot up to the Tetons? We know that that's cool. We wanted to do that anyway. And then, you know, it comes to the situation where you're trying to find a place to stay, because, you know, it's a very popular destination, right? And now you have the challenge of trying to find a place to stay. We're calling hotel after hotel in the area. Everything's booked out. Finally, I'm looking on Airbnb, and I find just the weirdest Airbnb, man. Probably maybe 45 minutes north of the Tetons. And again, you saw it in a previous video, it was literally an Airbnb that was on a drive-in movie theater. And it's stuff like that that makes the memories of the trip. Like, you could do Best Western after Best Western after Best Western and be comfortable and know that you're going to have everything you need, but the Best Westerns aren't memorable, man. I mean, sometimes they are. You know, you can make them memorable for sure. But what's memorable is the weird and unplanned experiences. So the lesson here is don't overplan. The most important plan you should have, actually, is plan for things to not go as planned. That's probably the best lesson for that, right? And this is a lot of points. I don't even remember if I'm on 9 or 10, so that's probably a good time to end this one and enjoy this beautiful scenery out in Yellowstone Park. As always, stay safe out there, stay low, practice a positive mental attitude, listen to the Bad Brains, and on that, FXDLS Brooklyn is out.